Please pray with me. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable to you, O God, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Do you remember your dreams as a kid? Specifically, what did you want to be when you grew up? Think back for a second. What was it? Now, I was a fairly practical kid. I knew that what I really wanted to do was a total impossibility. In other words, I knew I was never going to be a Viper pilot assigned to the Battlestar Galactica, and I was never going to be a Jedi. So I had to be a little more realistic with what I wanted to be when I grew up. And I decided I wanted to be a rescue paramedic because of what I saw on the TV show Emergency. You guys remember this show? It was a 1970s type of thing. I was a real little kid. I was probably 7 or 8 years old, but I wanted to be John DeSoto, it was Roy DeSoto and John Gage. Those were the two guys, and because they rescued so many people, from the guy having the heart attack that gets stuck in the elevator, to wearing those utility belts and swinging upside down on a crane hanging out over, I thought, wow, that's really cool. That's what I want to do. That's what I wanted to be. I've shared before that I grew up in Leavenworth, Kansas, and my dream changed when I was 12 years old. So the scenario is this. I'm playing Little League. Little League, you played the same team, 10, 11, and 12 years old. 10 years old, I was a right fielder. 11 years old, I was a second baseman. And 12 years old, I was a second baseman when our pitching ran into problems in the second game of the season. We were already down. I still remember it was 5-1. We were down. The bases were loaded, nobody out, and the coach walks out and says, "We're just going to give you a try." So I have 8 warm-up pitches, and I get there, and I strike out the next 3 guys on 10 pitches. 3 and down, 2 strikes, 1 ball, 3rd strike, we're out of the inning. We ended up coming back and winning that game. My mom has this picture that she took of me, apparently that day, I'm assuming, that has the little write-up in the paper next to it, and is still in their house. That was a big thing for them, and so I was hooked. Why not go big? I want to be a Major League pitcher now. And it worked for a while, the dream stayed alive for a while. I was pretty dominant that whole rest of that year. It was last year Little League. Pony League, I was really good. First year of Legion Ball, I led the region in saves. I was really kicking it until you get to the varsity part of high school, and then reality kind of took hold there. Because I went to Leavenworth, which was the smallest 6A school in Kansas at the time, and we played all those big Shawnee Mission schools, and we played Lawrence High School when Lawrence was just one high school. I still remember that because their coach, Lynn Herod, I think was his name at the time, he was one of our counselors at KU baseball camp, and he was the guy that worked with our team. And I remember him telling us, yeah, we kind of felt sorry for you guys because we had a roster of 24 guys, and we looked across and you guys had 12. So when they would bring somebody in to pitch, somebody was already warming up in the bullpen. With us, it was like I had to come over from third base and take my 8 warm-up pitches and then go at it. Well, even though I had some chances to pitch in college, the logistics of some things just did not work out, and so I didn't do that, and I knew that I was not going to be pitching in the major leagues. That was the end of that dream. So I had to change dreams again, and this time I went to journalism. I love to write, but the 2 guys that I really emulated or really wanted to emulate one was Tom Brokaw. He was the NBC Nightly News anchor, and what I really liked about him is his storytelling was just amazing. He had that voice, number one, which I do not have, but he had this great storytelling ability, and he got to travel to really cool places. I thought, that's for me. I could do that. And then the other one was Andy Rooney. Do you remember him? He was the tail end guy on 60 Minutes. I didn't really know how to take Andy Rooney at first, but my dad, I remember my dad's reaction to him. My dad either was super excited about what he had to say or he really had something against what he had to say, but he always had a reaction to whatever Andy Rooney said. As luck would have it right now, at the library, they had a sale a few weeks ago where you can buy any book for $2. They had a collection of Andy Rooney's self-picked best scripts that he did for that. So there's 12 of every year of the 23 years he was on 60 Minutes. Right now I'm up to 1991. So I got a few years to go. But anyway, Andy Rooney was, so what I did was I decided to go to school for that. So I went to KU, and my degree actually is a Bachelor's of Science in Journalism and Mass Communications. That's what my official degree is in. And it worked for a while there. I went to work for actually Gannett, which is the parent company of USA Today, and we moved around for my job for a few years, but we did that for 20 years. We lived in 3 different states, and we moved around, and then you know what happened? Dang it, the dream changed again. This time it was ministry. And full-time ministry as a communications person. So it was interesting because I didn't even know that thing existed until I saw an advertisement for it. But I was a writer who had learned how to shoot video. And then after I got the job and started working at it, I got to thinking, you know, I got hooked on these thing called podcasts that I'd never really paid attention to before. And I wanted to do that. And so it was a little dream shift throughout that position. Well, as luck would have it, I've had some good luck with that. So this is my podcast in layman's terms. I've been lucky enough, I've won a couple of national awards with this podcast. And it allows me to tell stories. So basically what I do is I go to churches or to individuals who are doing some amazing things, and I tell their story in a podcast format. And the weeks in between there, I basically rewrite the sermon that I share with you all and post that and share that information that way. But none of that stuff would have ever happened if I hadn't been willing to pivot, change and adapt to what the situation was. The dream had to change. I'd be a pretty miserable person right now if I was still hanging on to that. I want to be a major league pitcher. Because as far as I know, the only person that ever pitched at my age was Satchel Paige. So I'm pretty sure that I wouldn't be doing that anyway. But dreams, I'm here to tell you, are wonderful, wonderful things. They keep us going. They keep us entertained, and they keep us engaged, more importantly than anything. And we're going to explore that this morning, the importance of dreams, through the story of a man named Joseph, the son of Jacob. It comes from the Old Testament, and this is kind of we have 2 sets of verses today. This is the setup piece. Genesis 37, verses 2 through 11. This is the account of Jacob's descendants. Joseph was 17 years old and tended the flock with his brothers. While he was helping the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, his father's wives, Joseph told their father unflattering things about them. In other words, he was a tattletale. Now Israel loved Joseph. Remember, Israel is Jacob. Loved Joseph more than any of his other sons because he was born while Jacob was old. Jacob had made for him a long robe. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of his brothers, they hated him and couldn't even talk nicely to him. Joseph had a dream and told it to his brothers, which made them hate him even more. He said to them, listen to this dream I had. When we were binding stalks of grain in the field, my stalk got up and stood upright while your stalks gathered around it and bowed down to my stalk. His brothers said to him, will you really be our king and rule over us? So they hated him even more because of this dream that he told them. Then Joseph had another dream and described it to his brothers. I've just dreamed again, and this time the sun and the moon and the 11 stars were bowing down to me. When he described it to his father and brothers, his father scolded him and said to him, what kind of dreams have you dreamed? And am I and your mother and your brothers supposed to come and bow down to the ground in front of you? His brothers were jealous of him but his father took careful note of the matter. May God add a blessing to the reading, hearing, and understanding of Scripture. Folks, this is a big old sibling rivalry, and it's 10 against 1 at this point. There are 11 brothers. And the dreams that Joseph has are just extremely vivid and telling. He and his brothers are out in the harvest, and all of a sudden, Joseph's stalk stands straight up and theirs bowed down. And the idea is that apparently he, as the youngest, is going to be the ruler of them. And I can't express to you just how against the culture of that time that would have been. It was extremely rare for the older brother not to be the one that became the patriarch of the family, that everyone else paid attention to, that everyone else did whatever they said, let alone number 11 in the pecking order. That would have been unheard of. And another thing is Joseph, you kind of got the feeling that Joseph is a little bit of a smart aleck, because He had to know that this was going to make his brothers mad. And what did he do? He still went and told them. Kind of an in-your-face kind of moment. The difference, the second time around, the brothers are mad, and now he's kind of made his dad mad too, at least a little bit, but the dad at least says, I don't like this, but I'm going to pay attention to it. Because it is a dream, and who knows what that might mean. Joseph had dreams, aspirations, and thoughts for success. A lot happens right after that. So we're going to do a very rapid fire, catch you up to the rest of the story here. Joseph's brothers decide they're going to kill him. So when they're off shepherding, Joseph is sent out by his father to kind of basically spy on them, see how they're doing. And the brothers decide, we're going to kill him, except for one. The oldest brother decides, no, let's throw him in this cistern. And then that brother walks away. And while that brother's away, a caravan comes from the north to the south, and they're heading towards Egypt. And so what they do is they say, hey, let's just sell him. They sell their own brother into slavery. And then to top it off, what they do is they take an animal and they kill the animal, and then they take that nice long robe that we read about, and they smeared it with blood from the animal, and they take it back, and so their father thinks that Joseph is dead. He's been killed by a wild animal. That's the thinking here. Joseph ends up being taken down to Egypt, and he gets sold to a man named Potiphar, who happens to be kind of like the captain of the guard for the Pharaoh. So he gets sold to royalty almost within the Egyptian way of life. So Joseph, those dreams that he had to adapt them. He had to change. He had to figure out what was the best scenario for him at the life that he now had. Because the dream he had before isn't going to happen. He's not even in his own homeland anymore. So life isn't what he wanted it to be, but he decided he was going to live with it. Well, his master's wife likes Joseph a lot, thinks he looks pretty good, and wants to strike up a little romance with him. And Joseph says no, he's not going to do that to his master. And after a little while of this wife hitting on him over and over again, finally, one day she really forces herself on him, and he starts to run away. She grabs a piece of his clothing and tears it. And she's so mad that he scorned her again that she makes up a story that he tried to assault her. And so Joseph gets thrown in prison. Instead of living the good life as the servant of one of these top-notch people in Egypt, he now is stuck in jail. And so again, he has to shift his thinking, because there's no telling when he's going to get out of here, or if he's going to be out at all. He might be killed. As luck would have it, he comes across the jailer, and the jailer recognizes that Joseph has some good traits there, and puts him in charge of everything in the jail. And so it's still worse than what he had before, but it could have been even worse than that. Joseph has to adapt his dreams yet again. And then something happens. Time goes by. We don't know exactly how long, but all of a sudden Joseph comes across two people that the Pharaoh had thrown in prison, a baker and a cupbearer. And they have dreams. And they're talking about it, and Joseph comes upon them and he says, "Tell me about your dream again." The baker's dream is unfortunately a bad one. Joseph interprets that and says, in 3 days you're going to be hung. I don't know how you have that discussion with somebody, but that's what happened. Then the cupbearer tells, and he says, you're actually in pretty good shape. In 3 days you're going to be released. And the cupbearer is so appreciative of hearing that information that he asks Joseph what he can do for him. And Joseph basically says, just don't forget me. But that's exactly what happens. Have you ever been there? Have you ever felt like you were forgotten by somebody important to you? I think we've all been there sometime, the degree of which might vary. But the other thing is that you've got this time frame where Joseph thinks things are getting better. He gets sold into slavery, and then he lands in a great location, and he has a great job, and he's cared for, he's treated like he's one of the family, and then he gets put to prison. So he had this expectation. Things were going well. He was going to achieve a dream of some kind, and then it gets ripped away from him. Sometimes we get teased with fulfillment of our dreams. I'll share my tease of fulfillment. I told you that I knew I wasn't going to be a major league pitcher, but I didn't give up on that dream as quickly as I told you. So my junior year in high school, the Atlanta Braves had a tryout camp in St. Joseph, Missouri. Some friends and I decided, what the heck? We got in the car, we drove to St. Joseph, and I decided I signed the log as I wanted to try out pitching. I shouldn't have done that. I knew I didn't throw hard enough. In fact, I threw a whole 82 miles an hour. In this era, which isn't that long ago, I don't think, so we're talking like 1989, the average Major League fastball was 85. Now it's like 91 or something like that. It's ridiculous. For perspective, 82 miles an hour is the speed of my son's slider. His off-speed pitch was 82 miles an hour. That was as hard as I could throw. And so needless to say, before lunch, I was excused. I got to go home. I didn't last. The second year, my senior year, those buddies of mine decided they weren't even going to try it again. I thought, and I wasn't going to either. But I woke up that Saturday morning, and I thought, I don't have anything else to do. I woke up early. I thought, it's just over in Overland Park. I've done more stupid stuff for half a day. I can go do that again. This time I signed up as an infielder, as a third baseman. And they sign you up, and they send you to a location. You throw, you warm up, you play catch and everything. And here's where I got teased by the dream. They just absolutely crush ground balls at you. It's not like the ones before a game where the coach kind of lollygags it and you're just kind of getting used to the motions of everything. This guy was absolutely fungo bad, just peppering stuff. And they would tell you where to play. So you didn't get to back up. If you wanted to back up further, they said, nope, I want you in this spot. It was all to test a bunch of stuff. At the end of that first morning, they start coming around and they start telling everybody, you can go, whatever. And I'm expecting to get the heave-ho. The guy comes over, he's in this full Braves road uniform, and he comes over, and there's three of us left at third base, because they kind of excuse you as the day goes on. One of the guys, he said, you got really good footwork, but you don't really have an arm for third base. And this guy had a cannon, but he told me it was more of an outfielder arm, because he had to kind of do a crow hop, which is kind of a step to get you momentum to get the ball over across the diamond. The other guy just got excused, and I'm just waiting to see, does he at least going to tell me something, And he walks up to me and he says, I really like your footwork, and you're the fastest arm across the diamond that we've had in weeks. Apparently 85 to 95 is the normal for a third baseman to throw from third base to first base, and I got clocked at 99. And without just one step. So the arm was the one thing I actually had going for me. So I got to stay. He told me go get lunch and then come back. I was like, sweet! This is awesome. I went and got lunch, I came back, more ground balls, situational stuff with runners this time. Things look really good. A couple of guys got, after that, they got to go home. They told me to stay there. I'm like, all right, this is pretty cool. And then it was time to hit. And that's where it ended. I now know what a 95 mile an hour fastball looks like, because that's the guy that they brought with them. It was a minor leaguer that threw 95. And we were supposed to pull the ball. The best I could do was hit it just to the right part of second base, because I could not get my bat fast enough. And so I got to go home. But I tell you what, for about 5 hours, that was a cool dream. Luckily for Joseph, that isn't what happened to him. Years go by, and the Pharaoh himself has a dream. 7 fat cows come out of the Nile, followed by 7 scrawny, sick-looking cows. And then another dream. There's a stalk of grain that grows, and 7 ears grow out of it. And they're healthy, and they look great, and then all of a sudden they shrivel. And he goes to his magicians, the Pharaoh does, and says, what does this mean? And they can't tell him. They have no idea. It was then that the cupbearer remembers, oh, the dude in the jail. I forgot all about him. Pharaoh, you got to go talk to this guy. Trust me. They bring Joseph up. He prays, and he tells the Pharaoh what that dream means. There's going to be 7 years of plenty, followed by 7 years of drought and famine. But Joseph took it one step further. He didn't just say those words. What he said was, Pharaoh, I think what you should do is you should figure out how to take those 7 years of plenty and store that stuff, so that when there's the 7 years of famine, we don't starve. And in fact, it may actually help the entire region. And that gets us to the second verse today that I want to go over. It's Genesis 41, 37 through 40. It picks up the story right there. This advice seemed wise to Pharaoh and all of his servants. And the Pharaoh said to his servants, can we find a man with more God-given gifts than this one? Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, since God has made all this known to you, no one is as intelligent and wise as you are. You will be in charge of my kingdom, and all my people will obey your command. Only as the enthroned king will I be greater than you. 7 years of plenty come and go. 7 years of absolute famine happen. And it expands the whole region. So what happens? Jacob sends the 11, actually now it's 11 brothers, because a younger one, Benjamin, has been born in the interim. Send them down to Egypt to buy grain, because the Egyptians were smart. They harvested and stored stuff. I'm not going to get into all the details today. If you want to read more about this, it's Genesis 42 and 43. It tells you the entire story of what happens next. But basically, when the brothers get there, they do not recognize Joseph. And it's easy to understand why. They haven't seen him since he was 17. And he's probably in all the Egyptian headdress and the makeup and dressed that way. And he's speaking Egyptian, undoubtedly, at this point. They have no reason to think that their brother would be the one that they're talking to. And so you know what happened? They had to bow down to him as he distributed the food. Joseph's dream actually did come true. Didn't come true in the way that he expected it. It didn't come true in the way that he wanted it. It came true in the way that God decided it was going to happen. Joseph ended up living his dream. And I'm not naive here, folks. I recognize that most of us don't get that. I certainly didn't. I'm here with you all today. I never wore an Atlanta Braves jersey. So I know I know what it's like when dreams don't exactly happen. But yet, you know what? I don't regret anything that happened. All those shifts and changes, I don't regret any of them. Because I'm here today, I'm doing ministry with all of you folks, trying to do something better for the community that I live in. And every stop along my career path, every time the dream changed, I learned something. I picked up a skill. I learned information. I figured out a lesson. And that helped me to do what I do today with at least some semblance of competency. But I had to be willing to let God change the dream. And I had to recognize it. And I couldn't get mired in the dream that no longer was, so I could focus on what was coming up. And that's what Joseph did. And I know that God has done this for me. In every step along the way, He put me in the right place at the right time for the right purpose. Now, your dream may not look anything like the one you had when you were 8 years old. I'm still not going to be a Viper pilot from the Battlestar Galactica. I'm not going to be a firefighter. I'm not going to be Tom Brokaw on the nightly news. But I'm guessing that your dreams at the ages that you are now are also vastly different than the ones when you were in your 20s or 30s. Pre-kids, dreams change. Just remember that Joseph kept adapting every time, Whatever his circumstance, when he was with his brothers, when he was in Egypt, when he was in jail, they kept changing. And with God's help, we can be open to paying attention to what those changes are for us too. Because dreams keep on going. They aren't limited by your age. Amen.